Hello and welcome to Positively United. Today, Friday the 16th of January. I'm recording this at about 9 p.m. UK time. A little bit later than normal, but it's been a busy day. And it's certainly been a busy day in terms of Manchester United news. For the very tiny number of people who were watching my channel yesterday, you'll remember that I said I thought it was highly unlikely that we would make any signings of any kind in January. And I said that it would be a shame if we didn't think about doing a loan at least. Because surely a loan, it doesn't matter if a new head coach coming in the summer doesn't like that person, that player. They're gone by the time the new manager comes in. It would help us in the position. It would make total sense to do a deal in would be midfield, of course, where we're a little bit significantly underpowered. Even if we've got so few games to play between now and the end of the season, our quality midfield just isn't good enough, and our opportunities for rotation in a system that Michael Carrick will be playing 4-3-3 means that we really do need an extra player in midfield, because even with so few games to play, does Casemiro ever really last in terms of the quality of his output beyond the 60th minute? He's a player that I'm guessing even when he's playing really well is going to be coming off in the 60th, 65th, 70th minute of most games. Do we have a player who can come on who is of equal quality? No. Mainu is obviously probably the biggest winner out of the sacking of Ruben Amorim. But is he going to play every single minute of every single game? And then you've got Ugarte. Well, an awful lot of us have made up our mind about Ugarte, but he just isn't good enough. So an additional midfielder would have been the obvious thing. A purchase in January when we don't know who the head coach is going to be at the beginning of next season doesn't kind of really make any sense. Although, of course, it makes more sense in the football structure that we have these days than it made in the past under, say, Ten Hag, when Ten Hag was essentially making all the purchase decisions. I'll have something to say about that in a future video. As I said yesterday, a loan deal in midfield would make sense. And lo and behold, today, great news. On Terry Fleur's channel, The Football Terrace, he had journalist Ben Jacobs on, and Ben Jacobs dropped this bomb that Manchester United were in secret talks with a midfielder who's got Premier League experience but is currently playing in Europe. And of course, he wasn't willing to say who it was, and then all sorts of rumours started to go around. Now, there's one rumour, of course, we can completely discount, and that's that it would be Ruben Neves, because Ruben Neves, of course, isn't playing in Europe. He's playing in the Middle East. So it's not Ruben Neves. And lots of names started to get mentioned, but one name has become much more strongly mentioned around about 5 p.m., 6 p.m. UK time here in Britain, and it is Ruben Loftus-Cheek. Ruben Loftus-Cheek makes so much sense if you think about it logically. He's a good player. I know it's inevitable these days. As soon as a player is mentioned, certainly in the context of what we're mentioning here, look, for some people, and we can all guess who, the usual suspects, the mere thought of a loan deal is something they'll immediately attack, because to them it's another excuse to rip the club apart, to say that the club is being badly managed by Ineos, that this is a sign of, the club being finished and United are over and all this sort of stuff, simply because we're looking at a loan deal for a player. So for some people, it doesn't matter what name you mention, it won't be good enough, right? But Ruben Loftus-Cheek is good enough. He's a really, really good player. And this is the intriguing thing about the fact that Ruben Loftus-Cheek's name is being mentioned. When did Ruben Loftus-Cheek have his best period as a player? At Chelsea, which I know pisses a lot of people off, but under Thomas Tuchel. So if you're mind is already geared up to thinking that it is going to be Tuchel coming in as head coach in the summer. And I think it's by far the strongest option. I should say the strongest likelihood. It's not my top option. But I think it's, without a shadow of a doubt at the moment, the most likely outcome of the summer is that Thomas Tuchel becomes Manchester United head coach. If you're already thinking in those terms and you are the United hierarchy, getting in Ruben Loftus-Cheek on a loan deal with a potential perhaps to buy, and you know that Tuchel is coming in the summer, and Tuchel is a huge fan of Ruben Loftus-Cheek. Not my words, by the way, not something I've dreamt up. There's a really excellent article on the BBC website about Ruben Loftus-Cheek, and it mentions just how well Tuchel thought of Ruben Loftus-Cheek. And it was Tuchel who was really focused on bringing Ruben Loftus-Cheek out of the Chelsea Academy system and giving him his first team opportunity. This is a player that Tuchel really likes. He's being mentioned as that potential secret player that Ben Jacobs mentioned. I think so much of this fits. I might be completely wrong. Maybe it isn't Ruben Loftus-Cheek, but I have to say it makes an awful lot of sense and it feels right in all ways. I think he would improve our options in midfield without a shadow of a doubt. If Tuchel is going to be our next head coach, it would make absolute sense for Ruben Loftus-Cheek to be around here and to be perhaps taken on as a full-time player. Would make complete sense. So I think the Ruben Loftus-Cheek rumours have got an awful lot of logic behind them, and it wouldn't surprise me if it's true. Talking about who our next manager could be, I mean, I think we all knew, didn't we, that Oliver Glasner was not going to sign a new contract at Crystal Palace, but it was a rumour or a well-sourced rumour. I think it was around about Christmas time, wasn't it, that started to come out, that he wasn't going to sign a new contract. Well, today it's official. He's definitely not going to sign a new contract at Crystal Palace. So Oliver Glasner becomes a really, really cheap alternative in the summer if we wanted him. Look, I'm not massively excited about Glasner. I certainly wouldn't be against it, and I certainly support him. But he wouldn't excite me like a Tuchel appointment would, or a Pochettino appointment would. Glasner would be, I think, it just rings to me. It just feels to me like it would be another Ten Hag or another, I hate to say it, but another Ruben Amorim. Actually, I think that's being unfair. I think he would be better than both of those two. But if our aim is to really go for the very best, I don't see that being Oliver Glasner. But if he is appointed, and he does, I'd absolutely want him to prove me wrong. I really would, and I'd get behind him. But yeah, but it's interesting he's now definitely going to be available. It was Michael Carrick's first press conference today as as our head coach until the end of the season, as Manchester United put it. He was asked, of course, about the criticism that has been made of him by former teammates. By the way, that, you know, I'm sure, like you, I love former players. I'm a huge fan of players, of former players like Nicky Butt and Paul Scholes, who can't love Roy Keane. Well, apart from Alec Ferguson, of course. But God, I wish they'd shut up at the moment. I really do. I wish they would just let their podcasts be bland and boring for a bit, and just give Michael Carrick a bit of a free ride just for a few games. Does the criticism have to be so brutal? Does it have to be so cutting at the moment? His team hasn't even kicked one ball in anger yet. For goodness sake, can you lay off just for a bit? I know that there is this incessant, unceasing, never-ending need for clickbait content on social media. Am I a part of it? I don't know. I genuinely don't think I am. I sort of almost like strive not to say ridiculously stupid, controversial things that aren't true just simply to make noise. But come on, just give him a break, okay? But I love the fact that when he was asked about it, this is what he said, and I quote, about the criticisms he's getting from former teammates in the media. They're not putting more pressure on me. I don't feel that. There are plenty of opinions around, some positive, some not too much. It's totally irrelevant in terms of what I focus on. I know what I want to improve on and how we want to work. I loved that comment. It's totally irrelevant. Well done, Michael. Well done, Michael Carrick. Put them in their place. I know that they are loved former players. I have nothing but respect for Roy Keane and Paul Scholes. Paul Scholes is one of my favourite players ever. I think he was the Bobby Charlton of his era, by the way. I think he is one of the greatest players who's ever played for Manchester United. Love Nicky Butt. But please, lads, lay off Carrick for a bit. Give him a chance. But fantastic response from Michael Carrick. So, actually, pretty positive day today. Possibility of a loan in midfield, which I think is a really good idea. I thought Michael Carrick did really well in the press conference. He's never going to be the most exciting press conference performer. We've got to get used to that, by the way. We've got to just accept that. Some people are good in the public arena, some people aren't. It doesn't mean to say that if you're not great in public, you're not good at your job behind the scenes. I don't think there's any connection at all between those two. So let's lay off him. Let's just let him get on with the job, okay? Let's judge him by what happens on the pitch, not whether he can, make people laugh at a press conference or keep people on the edge of their seats in a press conference. It's an obligation. It's not his job. So a good day. I've left the bad news to the end, but the bad news is, again, pretty unsavory, pretty nasty stuff. So I mentioned, again, I think last night or the night before, that Laurie Whitwell and Andy Mitten of The Athletic, Talk of the Devils podcast, had started their last podcast off by, apologising is the wrong word, having to justify their independence as journalists, which I thought was outrageous that they felt that they had to. But they had come under quite a lot of criticism from the usual sources the day before, suggesting that in a sense they were holding back from being critical of the club, and in particular the Glazers and Ineos, because in a sense they were part of a pipeline, which is the club feeding them stories, which then they put out into the public, and they were scared about losing that pipeline. And Laurie Whitwell and Andy Mitten put a very, very persuasive case that that's just not the way it works. And I felt really sorry for them that they felt that they had to do that, but I guess they felt they had to. I noticed that Brent today was going in two-footed again. He wasn't withdrawing at all. He was doubling down on the nonsense and the poison. Nasty, horrible to see. Just totally uncalled for. But what was really uncalled for today in one of his videos was describing Michael Carrick as working for the enemy. Let that sink in for a bit. He hasn't, as I said, he hasn't been head coach for a single competitive minute this season yet. And you have a YouTuber with millions of followers describing him as working for the enemy. What an absolutely outrageous thing to say. What right do you have to do that? What an outrageous thing to say. Michael Carrick working for the enemy. He's working for the people who own and control Manchester United. If he wants to be Manchester United coach, and somebody has to be, That's what they have to do. It's called earning a living. The poison that comes out of this particular source is becoming intolerable, and I think people have to start calling out and speaking out against it. It's really starting to eat away at this club. Sorry to end on a negative note, but it needs to be said, and it needs to stop. Despite that, always remain positively united. If you like what I do, please like the video, subscribe to the channel. If you want to make a contribution to my costs, then I'd gratefully receive anything. And so I've set up a Ko-fi account. The link will be in the description. What will I use that money for? To up the technical quality of what I do. It's pretty basic at the moment. I'm looking around at it. It's a camera and a light, essentially, and a laptop computer. And I kind of need to up it. I know I do. At the moment, it's really just my opinion, and it's not much flash or polish. I hope to up the polish as soon as I can. So yeah, anything gratefully received. So as I said, until next time, remain positively united, and see you next time.